Coming up on Tech News Today, Pinterest acquires a virtual keyboard company. Why? I don't know, but we'll talk about that. Also, Meerkat pivots, and we're going to take a look at what we expect is their pivot. It's a video chat app. How foster care and hackathons intersect at the White House. Also, game developer Barbie gets a second chance, and the robot uprising leads to a world filled with robots acting as traffic cops. All that and more coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1535, recorded Wednesday, June 15th, 2016.
This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring? With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 100-plus job sites, including social networks, all with a single click. Screen, rate, and hire the right candidates fast. Try ZipRecruiter with a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/TNT.
And by Wealthfront. Wealthfront is a low-cost automated investment service and the most sophisticated way to invest your money. Whether you've got millions or you're just starting out, visit wealthfront.com/TNT and sign up to get your free personalized investment portfolio. That's wealthfront.com/TNT.
And by Zerto, virtual replication and disaster recovery technology that gives you the confidence to keep your business moving forward no matter what comes your way. Zerto empowers you to protect and recover your IT assets, move to the cloud, and know that you're ready for anything. Get a free readiness assessment for your data center at confidentcio.com. Hello, this is Tech News Today, the show where we talk about all the technology news with people who are curious about technology. I am Megan Morrone.
I'm Jason Howell. I like what you did there. You switched it up a little bit. Curiosity, passion, they travel in the same group together, I think, often. Joining us, we've actually had Scott Hanselman on as a guest in the past, and it's great to bring him on as kind of a full episode guest today. Podcaster, programmer, teacher, speaker. It's like you do everything, Scott.
That is overstating it, but thank you very much.
You also work at Microsoft, of course.
Professional enthusiast.
Yeah, there we go, of all things technology. Tell us a little bit about your podcast. I think you have 3 going right now.
Well, I've got a podcast called Hansel Minutes. And if you actually, if you go out and Google, let's try this right now. Go and Google for Scott. It's usually an epic battle between me and Scott brand toilet tissue. Right now I'm below Scott fly rods.
Oh no, the fly rods have taken over.
Scott's got the Scott toilet paper people got a little restricted trademark.
I got Scott Sports.
So evil. Yeah, Scott, I just scroll down a smidge.
I see you on the first page.
There I am, first page. So if you click there and then you go to podcast below the tattooed guy. Yeah, see the toilet paper people.
Scott Ian of Anthrax, actually. I'm not joking.
See, now, you got to go into incognito mode because it's you're seeing it.
Oh, you're probably seeing it through
you're seeing your own results. So you obviously been looking for Scott Wiener instead of me.
Yeah, Kara.
There was a brief moment in 2001, I believe, where I was on the first page of Megan's. I'm still proud of that. I still,
respect for that.
That was the screensavers.
But if you go there, you go to my blog, my website, rather, and click on podcasts. I've got a show called Hansel Minutes. And it was done because there were so many podcasts where I felt wasted people's times. People just, hey, how's it going? What's the weather like? What are you doing? What's going on? There's a lot of podcasts out there, with all due respect, that are basically 2 dudes on Skype. Yep. And my show is not. It is really interesting people from really interesting backgrounds talking about the technology that they love, and it is guaranteed not to waste your time. So I would encourage people to check that out. And my other podcasts. We have a lot of fun.
Well, with you on today, we guarantee not to waste anyone's time today as well. We've got you.
That's true.
Let's start. Pinterest appears to be moving beyond the virtual vision board. Today, the company announced the acquisition of Flexi, makers of the predictive keyboard app for iOS and Android. Now, Pinterest is not acquiring the technology. They are just acquiring the creators of the app. Flexi originally began as an accessibility app to help the blind community type on mobile devices. Now, in a blog post on their site, Flexi says the technology will continue to be available. Scott, do you have any idea what this acqui-hire is about? Hiring an entire team that's been dedicated to predictive technology? Is it an AI thing? What do you think?
I think it's probably just an acqui-hire. You say that it's a 10-person team, and half of the team is going to be brought in. These are these kind of. It's not a $26 billion acquire. Let's just say, it's somewhat smaller, perhaps a couple of orders of magnitude smaller. I think when you see a bunch of talented people doing a bunch of really exciting stuff, you get them to work for you by any means necessary. And when it's a small team, you bring the whole company over.
Yeah, the app itself, I know at least it's been kind of a topic in Android communities for the past couple of weeks when someone finally, realized that Flexi just as an app had not seen an update in a really long time. They weren't really, talking about why or anything like that. So it's actually been, I've seen it bubbling up for the past month. Like, what the heck happened to Flexi? It was hot, and then suddenly it dropped off the face of the earth. So obviously now we know. Looks like the CEO specifically is being brought over to head up or at least be part of the product engineering team, and some of the other members of the team going over as well. So it really looks like just a straight up acqui-hire for them. And what I'm curious about is they say that the development of Flexi is going to, the actual app, so for those that actually care about like the keyboard itself, is going to slow down. You're not going to see much of that. And then you mentioned that it was going to be open source, but if they didn't acquire the technology, how can they open source it? Because I know that Flexi has had rounds of funding as well. So that would have to be figured out with the people who would actually put money into Flexi to begin with. I don't know how that all works, but
I do not know how that works either. But yeah, they say that it will be, some components of it will be open source. So maybe it's just not the whole thing. I don't know. But it is interesting. And Pinterest is this like slowly growing community, and it's not enough just to be what it used to be. So I think they want to increase, have better recommendations, better search. I mean, I think we're just expecting our computers to be smarter. People want to know they want their computers to know what they want to pin instead of choosing it themselves. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but I'm not a Pinterest fan myself. And are you, Scott?
I am, and I've been known to pin occasionally.
A pin from time to time. I drop a little pin here and there.
If I was actively planning a wedding, I would be using Pinterest. But it's the same thing with like Snapchat, where it's just like, I don't really get it. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm old. Right. I used Delicious for a long time, and I would say Delicious was Pinterest before Pinterest was, except Delicious was all about saving URLs and putting them in lists. What Pinterest did is it brought images and animated GIFs and media and video and the idea of a creative vision board to the web. Delicious was a poor man's Pinterest, and of course they went away and then they got acquired. So all of my intellectual property and all of my work has been done in curated Delicious links, not in Pinterest.
Yeah, Pinterest reported around 100 million monthly active users as of September 2015. So, I mean, that's a third of where Twitter kind of is right now. So it's not like they're a small player, but I think maybe in what we're seeing more and more in the social media world is, like you're saying, Megan, it's not enough to just be a social product. To, say our thing is all that we ever do is serve up, interesting articles across the web. It probably at this point makes a whole lot of sense to diversify a little bit more. Maybe Flexi with some of that AI in the background helps them at least be in the conversation, be in a similar pursuit as what some of the other social networks are doing along those lines. So maybe that helps. We already know that Zuckerberg is hot for video right now, and that Facebook has been aggressive in its pursuit of getting users to publish original video content to the site. Not to mention, Facebook is invested heavily in virtual reality. So it's a common question to ask what Facebook will be in 5 to 10 years' time. According to Nicola Mendelsohn, the person in charge of Facebook's European, Middle Eastern, and African operations, it's entirely possible that Facebook 5 years from now will be a place so full of video that written word is more or less obsolete. So take the Facebook that we know right now, remove the words, replace it with video and photos, and this is the future that we have to look forward to. Do we like the future, or are we scared of it? What do you guys think? Scott or Megan, I'll throw it to you.
I think that I'm just curious if this is, they say, Facebook says they're not pushing this, but we know that their algorithm favors live video. And I don't know for sure if their algorithm favors video in general. I think sometimes I find that posts that I make on Facebook that are just text seem to get a lot more traffic. And I don't know, maybe it's just something people like want to read something. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know if this is them pushing it. It makes sense in some way, but I think the end of text is interesting, to put it that way, because what we're seeing now is a lot of videos with text. Like a lot of people, they say that most people don't listen to the videos. They like, I think they said 80% or something is without sound. So now you see a lot of video tips with, with text over it. So I don't think it's necessarily the end of text.
I sat there and just stared at Facebook video that's closed captioning because I don't have my headphones on. So I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like, why am I get halfway through the video and I realize I'm a statistic at this point that they're totally using to guide their roadmap. What do you think, Scott? Do you think a social network like Facebook that has been one thing for so long based around text and obviously video and photos, this is kind of their new pursuit. But if the platform becomes nothing but that, and again, they're saying that this is driven by by the users and not by their own specific efforts, then nothing really stands out because everything's kind of the same. What do you think about that?
I think anytime a pundit of any kind declares the end of anything or something considered harmful or any of the obvious kind of clickbait type stuff, I think you have to ask yourself, why is this person saying that, and is it just for views? I think it's silly to declare the end of text. The Kindle declared the end of the bookstore, and that didn't happen.
Right.
That said, I think that there's two different things to look at. There's you had mentioned before about Flexi and how they're going to be bringing AI to Pinterest. If you look at things like Google Photos, you've got huge corpuses of information that are going to be analyzed by AI here. I'm less interested in whether or not it's all text and whether it's all video, but I'm interested in how quickly I can get to what I want, whether I can show me video with people throwing bananas at each other. And I want to be able to go and say, boom, I went right to that video. I want to be able to Google video like that. If Facebook can offer me that, if I can find the events and the content that I want quickly, if they can give me it contextualized and deal with the temporal aspect of things, I think that I would be fine with that. The other thing I think we're not thinking about is not everyone has high bandwidth. Not everyone has fast Wi-Fi. I've only got 15 gigs of data on my data plan. Is that going to be all used up by Facebook video and by video? I just think it's a little bit early. That would be like saying that VR then will declare the end of video. Like, when does it stop?
Right. I mean, I think we've always had a thirst for video. I mean, I remember in the early 2000s when it was like, oh, I can put video on the internet and it's going to be amazing. And then you'd sit there and it wasn't amazing because it was very slow. That's still, yeah, I mean, it is still. So we've always wanted video. We want more video. Now it is, I mean, it's faster, but I guess, yeah, it's not fast enough for everyone yet.
Yeah. And I guess, Nicola, the person in charge of that division at Facebook, was arguing that video condenses knowledge, and so it makes for quicker consumption of things. And I would argue on the flip side is that actually it takes a lot of effort to do video, and versus just sitting down and having a thought and going blah blah blah. And aside from that, it's a very passive. It can be a very passive experience. So maybe you're condensing knowledge, let's say, but how much of that is a truly effective kind of transference of that knowledge to the person on the other side. So
I can say as a community manager for .NET and for Microsoft development stuff, there are people who like text and there are people who like video. And when I go and spend months creating video, I get a lot of people saying it's not accessible. Don't forget the closed captioning. I can't scan it quickly. Can I just go Control F? You can't please everyone, but it's silly to say that video is going to eat the written word. And it is ridiculous to say that that video or podcasts are going to kill the way that we get information. It is simply linear, synchronous way to get stuff. I mean, you all listen to podcasts, but I doubt you listen to it at 1x speed. I go at least 1.5. So are we all going to just be like, and that's how we're going to consume information? I'm pretty sure I can read faster than you can talk.
Yeah. I mean, I think about that in podcast terms, because we go back and forth. Like, we have a lot of audio listeners and we have a lot of video listeners. And it's exactly what you said. Some people want one and others want the other. So, yeah, in terms of video, like, you can't watch a video while you're driving a car. It's more, I mean, you could, but you shouldn't.
Some people do. Not a good idea.
So,
but
we're,
anyway.
we're such multitaskers. Taskers. So I think, I mean, there's a place for audio too, as well as text. A place for everyone. Let's move on. App Transport Security, or ATS. That's the name of the feature that Apple rolled out last year with iOS 9 to ensure apps only load resources over HTTPS. At a security presentation at WWDC this week, that's Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference, Apple announced that by January 1st, 2017, ATS would be required for all apps in the Apple App Store. In their developer notes, Apple says ATS, quote, improves the privacy and data integrity of connections between an app and web services by enforcing additional security requirements for HTTP-based networking requests. Now, I assume that this is good news for those of us who care about our privacy on iPhones. But Scott, what does this mean for developers?
That was pretty dense. I have no idea.
So that's a perfect
hey, I'm
answer.
not even trying to front.
But I guess what is demanding HTTPS to get into the App Store mean for developers? Is that going to be a roadblock?
So remember when the URL what do you call it, the toolbar there kind of turned green, and everyone started saying, oh look, it indicates trust, and all of your banks were supposed to have green. There was a lot of confusion around what it means to be under SSL, right? There was an implication that it was somehow trustworthy, right? And I think we spend a lot of time talking about HTTPS, and we confuse the idea of trust with the idea of privacy. I can say, well, I'm doing it over HTTPS. Clearly, this is trustworthy. Like, I'm having a private conversation with my friend. Well, it may be a private conversation with Satan, right? It's completely secure end to end, but there's no implied trust relationship. So I just want to make sure that we separate the security of the conversation with the assurance that we are, in fact, talking to the right people. When applications get set up to make calls to the back end with their web services, without HTTPS, there is the possibility of what they call man-in-the-middle attacks, where somebody can say, oh, I'm Microsoft.com, and you didn't verify the certificate. You made no allusions to that this was Microsoft.com. So I'll just go ahead and be the man in the middle. If you spend any time in Starbucks or Subway or McDonald's where they have open Wi-Fi, you don't even know if that Wi-Fi was who they said they were going to be. So by insisting that application developers use HTTPS, it is the beginnings of building up a stack of trust, but it doesn't guarantee that they are validating their certificate. Someone could still be in the middle, and I go from my app to myapp.com, but I get a man in the middle that also has a certificate that somehow snuck in there, and I don't do any verification of the certificate. There's no real guarantees. So it's nuanced, but it's step zero, I think, to being able to trust where apps talk to and trust your data as they move over the wire.
Yeah, and I like very good description of that, by the way, because I feel like
that wasn't too much.
No, I feel like it gave me a little bit more clarity on kind of what's going on the back end. I appreciate that it's being set as a system default, because so often these things, especially when you're talking about apps, right? Like at least on the web, we have an address bar that can clue us into certain things. When you're in an app, you have no idea what's happening to that data behind the scenes. You don't know if they're securing it, if there's, if it's a secure path between servers or not. At least if it's set as a system default, you have some sort of assurance that if Apple allowed this onto the platform, that you have whatever it is they're promising in this regard. I definitely wish that we had that sort of assurance on Android, but Android as an operating system is so open that I don't know, it may be a long time before we see that. And I think this is further proof of just kind of Apple's kind of new, I don't know if it's a new commitment, but it's certainly something that they're very focused on right now across a lot of their efforts, which is just doubling down on security. And it's been a thing that we're hearing more and more from the company. Further proof, Apple Safari on Mac OS Sierra is going to require an opt-in for Flash content once Sierra comes out. And so that is going to, hold off a lot of insecurity from the browser perspective of things. So Apple's really dedicated to this, and I appreciate that. Yeah. And Meerkat. Let's talk about Meerkat. Haven't talked about them in a while. They were a South by Southwest darling in 2015, just last year, ahead of the curve when it came to the explosion of live video streaming services. It was very quickly eclipsed by Twitter's Periscope, and then, of course, Facebook's mega effort with Facebook Live. Meerkat then faded away with the promise of working on something new and exciting unrelated to live video streaming. Well, sources are saying that Meerkat has been stealthily testing its new group video chat app, which is called House Party, on iOS since February. You can actually install it right now. It's out there. There are plenty of users. In fact, the source says that House Party is already bigger than Meerkat ever was. I don't know how accurate that is, because Meerkat had quite a thing going there for a while. But I don't know. Do you think that if this is in fact Meerkat's next effort, it's kind of like a group scenario where basically when you launch the app, immediately you are available for chat with people that you know, and you can see others who are already there chatting with each other. You can join into it. They can say hi to you by just launching it. You're basically opening yourself up to being communicated with and doing a video chat like party with people. Is this a good transition for a company like Meerkat that had the world in the palm of its hands at one point?
Well, I hate to bring out the mother card, but I'm going to. As a parent of 3 children, this is the kind of house party I would prefer them to have than an actual house party where they're all in my house.
Yeah, litter in the place.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, a group video chatting, any video chatting is really not my thing. I have to say that. So this sounds great for the kids.
Any thoughts on this, Scott? Are you going to be participating in any house parties anytime soon?
Well, speaking from the parental perspective, when the kid's got his door closed and suddenly random people can beam their way into your house and into your kid's video, that is always a concern. So for me, it always comes down to privacy. And certainly no one under 13 should be messing with any of this kind of stuff. I think what Meerkat and companies like it forget about is how quickly commoditized these things are. What was a plugin becomes WebRTC and is built in, to the web. The idea that it might have a fun user interface is cool, but is there any real interesting technology there? Google Hangouts has had group chat for years. Skype has had group chat for years. If anyone big intended to come in and crush them, I don't see where there's new or interesting technology here. I was actually looking at a website called Aerial Spaces at aerialspac.es. And they're using entirely WebRTC for doing multiple stream broadcast spaces for educators, done entirely without plugins. So I think that while a company is trying to come up with apps like this, people are using the open web and Chrome and Edge to do it on their own. So by the time they launch, it might already be commoditized. So good luck to them, but I think we are forgetting how quickly the water rises.
So what you're saying is unless someone comes up with some completely revolutionary technology, it's going to be very difficult to just have an independent app, no matter what it does.
Facebook decided to get serious about live video, and boom, they have equivalent features of Periscope, and people are on live video all the time. And they were smart about it because Facebook went out to verified users first with their own custom app, the Facebook Mentions, which is a specific special Facebook app that you only get if you have the blue check. That gave an air of exclusivity and the ability to have your most favorite people, presumably the verified people are your most favorite, be able to do live video. And they went from 0 to video all over Facebook immediately. So I don't see how the first movers don't have a significant advantage here.
Right. So I mean, what you're really saying is even if you have a revolutionary technology, it's going to be really difficult to have for any independent person or company to have an app.
Yeah.
And with the Lego pieces that we have available to us in the open source world, if your special sauce is just picking a bunch of cool Lego pieces and snapping them together, like a video, but in a picture frame, and we can have 4 of them, I could probably prototype that. So they've got to have some magic that is not just group video, I think.
Right. This app.
People forget how quickly the water rises, and you can build this stuff very, very fast.
Yeah, I feel like we're seeing that more and more. Last week, we talked about Peter Kafka at Recode. He had an article about the app boom kind of being over, and it's basically about just this, the challenge of launching an app and having it be the same type of explosive, success that we've seen in years past. Just right now, everything is so flooded. There are so many, it's next to impossible to gain any traction. But,
that is a really interesting conversation we should have sometime. The idea of these walled gardens, which are these app stores, are trying to be their own ecosystem, their own internet, right? You can go on the internet and you can visit any web page you want. some of which behave like apps, or you can go into the Apple App Store or the Windows App Store or the Google Play Store, and that's their little club where they have websites that they call apps that talk to data sources and stuff like that. And everyone adds new SDKs and new features to try to make their internet, somehow special, while the internet itself continues to move forward with new and exciting features.
For sure.
Well, after the break, Scott just got back from hacking the Department of Health and Human Services, but in a good way. He will explain. But first, let's take a minute to thank ZipRecruiter, the sponsor of this episode. Are you hiring? Do you know where to post your job to find the best candidates? A little later in the show, we're going to talk about who is getting hired in game development these days and who is not getting hired. Hiring is a hot button issue these days. The right candidates might be out there. It might just be very difficult for you to find them. If you want to find the perfect hire, all you need to do is post your job on all the top job sites. And with ZipRecruiter, you can do that. Posting jobs in one place isn't enough to find quality candidates. Don't leave it up to chance. With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to more than 100 job boards, including social media networks like Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, all with a single click. Just post once and watch your candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. ZipRecruiter offers optimized pages that look great on any screen, add their unique mobile apply process for more visitors and applicants. Find candidates in any city or industry nationwide. No more juggling emails or calls to your office. You can add multiple users to your account. Quickly screen candidates with real-world questions using free-form, multiple-choice, or yes-no formats. View candidate responses in conjunction with their beautifully formatted resumes. Rate them and hire the right person fast. We just hired our new editor using ZipRecruiter. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by over 800,000 businesses. More than 100 million candidates' applications have been delivered. Right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. And we thank ZipRecruiter for their support of Tech News Today.
All right, let's take a little bit and chat with you, Scott, about a few stories that you've written up on that tie into kind of your previous experience, I think within the last month. They're very interesting. You were a technology advisor at the White House a while back for the Foster Care and Technology Hackathon. And those are just foster care and hackathon. I'm not used to hearing those kind of in the same, in the same sentence. How do those two things intersect in this case?
Well, there is a really great organization that is called Think of Us. You can go and Google for Think of Us. It's thinkof-us.org, and it is a nonprofit that kind of started as a commitment to action at the Clinton Global Initiative University by a gentleman named Sixto, S-I-X-T-O, Sixto Cancel, who is a former foster youth who created this organization called Think of Us, and they had this idea for a hackathon to bring some of the people in the open source and the hacking community together to solve some of the fundamental problems that youth and families have when dealing with, people who are in foster care. The foster care community has to deal with antiquated technology that was sometimes written in the 80s or the 90s. You can lose foster kids because you don't, or foster youth because you don't have the same kind of devices and mobile innovation that we see with startups all the time. So while people are trying to put together, video with 4 people and new startups, the foster youth are failing. So they put together this technology hackathon, and my friend Keisha Rogers gave me a call. She had been on my podcast before and said, let's see if we can get some heavy hitters to come by. So we put out the Avengers bat signal, to mix my metaphors a little bit, and we brought in folks from Slack and Clef and Stack Overflow and Microsoft and said, let's all go to the White House and spend a couple of days working on this, and let's hack foster care together. So we went and we spent a couple of days over there with the Department of Health and Human Services at the behest of the White House, and it was pretty amazing. There were probably a couple of hundred people there, and we locked ourselves in some rooms overnight and basically fueled ourselves with soda and caffeine and candy, and we came up with a bunch of different things, and you can see it all actually on YouTube. They've both the kickoff, the presentations, what we're going to do, as well as the resulting hacks. And hopefully those will be then posted up on GitHub, and we'll get to continue to work on them. So the point is, get involved. And if you're thinking, I want to get involved in open source, maybe you could be doing something more significant than a fart app.
Probably, yes. Probably good to at least raise above significance of a fart app, at the very least, which I'm convinced you did.
I bring up the fart app thing because if you go and search for foster care in the App Store, you're not going to find as much things as you will find fart apps.
Yeah.
And I do also, famously now, get to hold the dubious honor of having said fart app in the White House on a live stream.
All right, so you were in the White House. Obviously, that's a big part of this. I don't know, like explain the importance around an event like this taking place in the White House. I mean, just that alone kind of elevates it a bit.
Right. I think that, certainly with anything that is involving the White House, there's a certain amount of, positioning and posturing. But what this was a declaration that this was important, right? That bringing technology and the foster care system together is a statement. So when they collaborated and brought all of these organizations together to do this, by doing it in the White House and by doing it in this formal way, it was a statement that this matters, and I think that's what's important.
You really bring up a great point. I mean, we were just talking earlier about how, the app boom is over, just give up. But I mean, what we were really talking about is give up if your dream is to come up with something like a fart app or something that's just going to make you buckets of money and you're going to buy a house in San Francisco and, be famous. Like if that's your goal, you're not going to get it. But if you want to create something, if you want to, use what you've learned and really make a difference, then you can still do that. And that's why I love talking to you, because you have some really interesting ways that people can really do that.
Yeah. I think that being able to do these things that are meaningful is something that you can spend your spare time on. And, if you're involved in tech, you can learn about tech while doing it.
Now, you also wrote about a conversation you had during the hackathon that resulted in a pretty compelling question, I think. As I was reading through it, I was like, God, I got to organize my thoughts on this because I have so many thoughts, but I don't know how to say them. And you kind of say the same thing in your article, which is the question of, is technology killing curiosity? Explain the premise behind this.
Well, I feel like one time I was sitting at my table with some relatives that had come in from Africa, and it was the night after they had arrived. So they were very tired. And one of the kids, who I think was maybe 12 or 13 at the time, said, "Why is it light here right now?" And it was winter when we left South Africa, and now it's summer. And, geek that I am, I immediately grabbed some fruit and I was like, okay, you hold that, you're the sun. And then here you're going to tilt this, and that's the earth, and the earth's trying. And I started explaining how, the solar system works and kind of the orbital dynamics of it all and the motion around. And they just immediately were just like, Uncle Scott, like, what are you doing? Like, this is so stupid. Like, can we just Google that? And I was like, oh, you're killing me. Like, yeah, I mean, I know that there's benefits of getting an iPad and we could get a space app, but I mean, whatever happened to like, this is the Earth, man. We're going to see it's tilted 23 degrees. And I just felt like the lack of curiosity there was frustrating. And as I sit there in having a meal with my family, and then everyone's got their face in their iPhone, their iPad, it got me thinking, is all of this instantaneous asking Siri what the population in Zimbabwe is and getting an answer, killing our innate curiosity and our sense of experimentation?
Yeah, that is something I struggle with a lot. I mean, and what you're really saying also is that, there is an answer. Like Siri and Cortana and Google now have given our children this idea that there is one answer to the question, and there's not. I mean, the interesting part is that there isn't an answer, that there are no black and white answers. Like that's what we should be teaching children. Like the questions are the,
the will to experiment, and also, I think the importance of simply being bored.
That's a big one.
My kids have a maximum screen time, and if it's a random Tuesday and you've had your 30 minutes today, suck it up. I'm bored. Well, that's where creativity happens. So then I come out and I find that the 8-year-old is microwaving ice trays.
Technology becomes, I think, and has become just more and more complicated. Like I remember when I was a kid, there were the Radio Shack kits, the electronics kits that you get the board and you do to play around, blah, blah, blah. I feel like technology now has become so much more complicated. And maybe as I've gotten older, I've just become, gotten so overwhelmed by it that I end up feeling like it's more complicated, but maybe in the minds or the imagination of someone younger than me, it's not. But can that be overwhelming to the curious? Like, are we just at a point now where these things that were once curiosities are now so overwhelming in their complexity that it's almost defeating in that regard?
I like to take this Arthur C. Clarke quote and mess with it, and I say that any sufficiently advanced, they say any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. We've got each additional layer of abstraction is indistinguishable from magic. People don't realize how the internet works or how Wi-Fi works. I spent a half an hour explaining to my kids how FM radio worked, and that and the big like world-shattering stuff that affected AM versus FM radio and how it changed the direction of the war. People don't think about that stuff because it's all just magic. I think we need to spend more time taking apart toasters and that kind of stuff. So to your point about Radio Shack kits, if you go and Google for snap circuits and then put in snap circuits and Hanselman, you'll see two things that I did on teaching kids electronics, but also a Christmas list that I did on the best STEM toys for nerds and nerdettes. We talk about things like Little Bits and snap circuits. Those are the closest things that I can find to the old style Radio Shack. Let's see what we can do with a 9-volt battery type kits. I would say that they still exist. You just have to work harder to find them.
Yeah, now my kids have evolved to the soldering iron, so I'll give you all our old snap circuits in little bits.
Careful.
I know.
I know.
I just think of ouch when you say that.
Oh, and then I got this thing here. Check this out. I got this a couple of months ago.
I can't wait to see what it is.
Remember these?
Oh, yeah, the robotic arm. We have that. That's awesome.
But we put it together,
Yes.
right? I mean, it's one thing to just get it,
Right.
but if you don't actually assemble the thing, then what's the point, right?
You don't understand how
So
it all works together.
that's-
Well, the
I mean,
point
I
is
don't know.
picking things up with a robot arm. That's the
And
point.
I think also there's that. I think also people forget about how much things cost, right? It's funny how we're willing to put $300 or $400 or sometimes even more down for an Xbox. But, somebody says, well, that robot kit was $80. That's a little steep for my taste. Like, really? You bought Call of Duty Deluxe Edition, but you're not going to buy a freaking Arduino robot? I mean, how cool is that? Priorities, people. So I just think that we as a culture need to really focus on what a toy is.
Yeah, and I think what you say about boredom is totally essential, right? I feel like, and we're struggling with our children, 3 and 6 years old, so pretty young, but they're having to learn what boredom is. You know what I mean? If they had it their way, they'd be entertained 100% of the time. And like you say, crazy creative things come out of that boredom. When you force them to not be entertained all the time, they figure it out eventually. It's a little painful getting there sometimes, but eventually they figure it out. And that's where some really cool things happen. So
Absolutely agree.
Well, friend of the show, Allison Sheridan, heard our conversation yesterday on Star Trek, and she sent us a link to a YouTube video saying, this 34-second video is my son, who is now 25 years old, when he was around 2 years old, and his reaction to watching Star Trek. It is pretty funny.
got it down. I'm thinking, this is like every day. Like, sorry, audio listeners. All you get is a kid screaming at you.
And the Star Trek theme.
Yes. Yes, very good. Obviously very enthralled.
This goes
At a young
along
age.
with our...
And the sister says,
Yeah.
why is Star Trek on so
His
much?
sister, who's about to have a baby herself. But that is, it goes along interestingly with our discussion, because we were saying we both tried to show our children Star Trek, and they were, well, you said your parents tried to show you Star Trek. And
I
you
just
were
remember
bored.
growing up trying to watch it, and it was on and just kind of being bored by it. But that was my experience.
Yeah.
So I know everybody loves Star Trek.
Are you guys Star Trek fans in your house, Scott?
We do watch Star Trek. We started, though, rather than going all the way back, we started with the one with the whales, right?
Oh, the movie.
Star Trek 4.
Okay.
Straight to the movie, because there is more action. There's not enough fighting in Star Trek. So if you're going to introduce your kids to Star Trek, you've got to start with the one with the giant lizard, the Gorn, when he fights a lizard with the rocks. But I'm afraid that even the least sophisticated 8-year-old that we have still realized that the rock was made of foam. So didn't really age well.
Yeah. Well, for the record, the current movies, they never disappoint.
But that's
of course.
that's a whole thing, though. I mean, if you show them the new movie, now you're in PG-13 territory, and you might as well be showing them, Independence Day.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens at our house. So. They're almost 13.
It ends up there eventually.
They might as well be 13.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right, coming up, computer engineer Barbie gets a second chance, and this time she can actually program. It's a big time for Barbie. But first, let's take a minute to thank Wealthfront, the sponsor of this episode. You invest for the long term, for you, for your family's financial health, but trying to do all that yourself the right way it's difficult, it's complex, it's time consuming. And luckily, there's Wealthfront to help you through it. Traditional advisors charge huge fees, between 1% to 3% of what they manage. With Wealthfront, you pay 1/4% a year. That's 25 basis points, 0 commissions, no hidden fees. That's less than $5 a month to invest a $30,000 account. There are no additional charges for any of Wealthfront's services, and you can get started investing today with as little as $500. Unlike other financial advisors, Wealthfront won't bog you down with dozens of questions. They've simplified their risk identification process, which allows you to begin investing sooner. So it only takes a couple of minutes to sign up. You go to wealthfront.com, goes right to work. It starts monitoring your portfolios around the clock, takes action as soon as an opportunity arises. With Wealthfront portfolios, you get modern portfolio theory. That's what it's based on, which is designed to adjust according to your personal risk tolerance while also staying diversified and tax efficient. Wealthfront's transparent, it's accessible. You can view and track all your accounts in one single place. And now Wealthfront can track both your Wealthfront and non-Wealthfront bank and brokerage accounts. They're going to provide that to you in a summary of all your assets. You can see every trade that Wealthfront makes on your behalf in your dashboard, on your desktop, or with their mobile app. And Wealthfront is managing almost $3 billion in client assets, and that's growing every single day. So you have no reason to wait. Invest in your future today with Wealthfront. Visit wealthfront.com/TNT. You can sign up and get your free personalized investment portfolio. You'll see the customized allocation that they recommend for your profile. And just for Twit listeners, if you sign up to invest, Wealthfront will manage your first $15,000 entirely free of charge for life. Join the many Twit fans who have seen huge success with Wealthfront, and make sure and claim your offer today. That's wealthfront.com/TNT. And we thank Wealthfront for their support.
So I am about to show my age here, but in 1992, that was my freshman year of college. That was when Mattel released the Teen Talk Barbie, who was infamous for uttering such statements as, "Math class is tough." You probably remember that. Flash forward to 2014 when Mattel released a book called Barbie, I Can Be an Engineer. Things have changed, right? Not exactly. In fact, they might even be a little bit worse. Here to talk to us about this 2014 book and to find out if the newly released game developer Barbie handles these stereotypes any better is Casey Fiesler. Casey is an assistant professor in the Department of Information Science and Computer Science at the University of Colorado Boulder. She has a PhD in human-centered computing, a JD from Vanderbilt Law School. Currently, her focus is law, social computing, fan communities, and ethics. Welcome, Casey.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on. So let's start with the first 2014 Barbie book. What can you tell us about it?
Sure. So it was super disappointing, as you pointed out. And it was particularly disappointing because just the fact that there was a computer engineer Barbie at all was so cool. And then the book presented computer engineering as basically come up with some ideas and let the boys create it for you. And Barbie was also super incompetent to go along with that. So,
right, she's developing a game or developing something, and she says, "Oh, I'm just writing the designs. I'll let Kevin and Joe do the hard work."
Yeah.
So what happened? People complained about the book. Is the book still out there?
No, actually, after that happened, Mattel took it out of print, and which was interesting because it had been around since 2010.
Wow. So it wasn't until someone figured it out and wrote about it on the internet, and then they took it out of print.
Yep, exactly.
So you did a little remix of it. Can you tell us about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When it came out, it was such a huge deal. Everyone in my social networks were talking about it. And so I thought, well, at least one of the good things that would come out of this is that it wasn't just a little bit bad. It was so bad that obviously something good would happen. And I thought, well, it'll be a meme or a remix. And I was neck deep in my dissertation at the time, which was partly about remix. And so I decided to do it myself. And so I created a new narrative for the story. I blanked all the pages and wrote something new, which instead of being about Barbie's incompetence, was about her experiences with sexism and technology, and also how making a game is all about teamwork.
That's awesome. So, okay, now there's a new Barbie, a game developer Barbie. What is she like?
She's so much better. I actually have her right here. She actually kind of looks like a normal person. Like, she has sensible shoes.
Important.
And she has one thing that was also kind of cool is that she came with a little laptop that you're not going to be able to see it, but it has actual code on the laptop as opposed to the previous version, which was just ones and zeros. I guess she was coding in binary. And also, she doesn't have a book, but the text on the back of her box, I quite liked. It pointed out that different parts of game development and that it's about working in a team and that kind of thing.
So, Scott, I think you know some about the development of the game dev Barbie. What can you tell us about the development of it?
Well, as I understand it, there was a Barbie advisory council in 2015 that had lots of consultants from all over the place. And two of the people that I know who were on that were Kimberly Bryant, who started Black Girls Code, and Julie Ann Cromit from Google. And, people who know what they're doing, who came together and consulted with this kind of global Barbie advisory council, which sounds funny when you say global Barbie advisory council, but when you realize how impactful these kinds of things are with game developer Barbie or Ava DuVernay Barbie or the Misty ballet Barbie that are coming out, it really matters because these are the toys that we remember 30 years later, and these are the toys that shape who we are.
Did you want to show off your Barbies, Scott?
Oh, well, I like the dolls of the world. So I've got the Princess of South Africa with her Ndebele Ijali, which is a blanket there, and this is part of an older series. But I've also got Nigeria and Kenya and a number of other ones.
And I assume they can also code.
I'm sure that they could if I took them out of the box.
Okay.
But that one's a little dusty, actually.
So you wrote a piece today, Casey, on Slate about game developer Barbie and just about like the remix that you did and just how far we've come. And I posted on Twitter. It's a great read. I highly recommend people go to Slate and read it. And I got a tweet from someone who watches our show often and he said, and I get this a lot when we talk about this, just like, well, where are the women? Why aren't they here? Like, we would hire them if they were here. I think I have the
Says,
tweet.
why are there not more female developers? The doors are open, but none are coming. I don't understand. This is Mike Klain on Twitter.
So and you guys went back and forth in a great, surprisingly respectful for Twitter way. I enjoyed watching our conversations today. I mean, what would you say about people who say that where are they?
So there are a lot of reasons why we're seeing less women in computing now. And it's interesting because it's not only that women are underrepresented in computing, it's that they didn't used to be. And it's changed drastically. And there are lots of reasons for this. Some have to do with stereotype threat, girls being told when they're quite young that computers are for boys in the same way that math is for boys, or adults assuming that they wouldn't be as into computers as they are into Barbies. Mm-hmm. Some of it has to do with some of the traditional ways that we've taught computer science. Sometimes it's an environment that values competition over collaboration, which tends to not be as good for girls. There's also things that have to do with the workplace once they get there. So even if women learn computer science, sometimes there's what's called a leaky pipeline. They're not getting the support that they need, or once they're there, they're not being valued, or they don't perceive themselves as being valued. I mean, even just little things like there's some research that shows that in projects in college, girls tend to be the note takers in in groups because they're asked to, because that's the traditional kind of female role, and that kind of thing can happen in the workforce as well.
So, Scott, I know when we started the show, you were saying and pointed out that your podcast is not two guys on Skype. So, what would you say to this question? Where are they? The doors are open. Why aren't they coming?
Well, I think that it's not an appropriate question to say where are they? The doors are open. That implies that somehow all we needed to do was open the door, and that they would somehow find it. I think that when there is an inequality and when there are people who are on top, you can't just say, hey, there's the ladder, climb that wall, step on this thing. You have to help people up. And I think it starts at grade school. It starts at stereotypes. It starts on TV. It starts in gaming. I mean, it is as Casey very wisely said, it is a complicated and multifaceted thing. But the number one thing that I think that allies can do, or male allies, is to simply diversify your network. Get to know more people. There are lots of amazing people there. If you look at the archives page of my podcast, I accidentally had 7 out of the last 8 shows were women in technology. And it was not hard to do that at all. And it was simply by diversifying my network.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because as this has been going on, there's been kind of, as there usually is, lively kind of chat in the chat room. And I saw a comment go by a little bit earlier that basically said, my sister, had Barbies when she was growing up, or I had 2 sisters. They had Barbies when they were growing up, and they grew up, when they were in adulthood, like they grew up fine, so they're okay. Like, what's the harm in something like this? I think that's kind of plays to your point, which is that if this is an influence from if this is even introduced at such a young age, whether they realize it, whether we realize it, or whatever, it is a representable role model and could potentially influence in one way or another whether a girl decides, hey, this seems like an interesting thing for me to explore. If instead it actually deters you from that just by a comment that says math is hard or whatever the case may be, then that's a path that is kind of somewhat severed long term. So it all plays. I think this is fantastic that they're making the change, but and they've been doing this with a lot of other aspects of Barbie as well, like body type and all sorts of stuff. So they're representing now better than they have in the past.
Can I pose a question to Casey? I've always felt that the best phrase, the number one phrase, if one has a tweet, is to say representation matters. Absolutely. And I'd be curious if she agrees with that.
I do. Yeah. When I first saw the computer engineer Barbie, I thought, well, the reason that this is so good is because it lets a girl see themselves in this role, and they don't get that a lot in, for example, the media. I mean, one of the reasons for the stereotypes in computing is because the representations of programmers that we see are like someone, probably a white man, alone in a cubicle programming all day, and that's all we know that computer science is, which is certainly not the case. And so game developer Barbie being something where a girl can see themselves having this career, and look, this career is about creativity and storytelling and not just sitting alone in a cubicle.
So, Casey, you write in your article that you went from one unusually gender-balanced computer department at Georgia Tech to another at University of Colorado Boulder. So that made me think, do you think a lot of women who are learning to code, learning to program, are staying in academia for the purpose that you're talking about, to stay and teach, to be representative, to teach more people? Do you think that is happening?
I've never thought about that. That's an interesting idea. In some ways, I like that idea, because one thing that we could really use is high school computer science teachers. We really need more of those. And so that would actually be a nice idea. And, I've seen a lot of comments to the article that I wrote today and on Facebook and this kind of thing, women saying, I am a woman in a technology job and I don't see these issues, which is sometimes true. And I hope that it's getting better. The other thing about my position is that the PhD program that I came out of, and also the department that I'm in now, is not just a traditional computer science department. It was interactive computing before, and now it's information science. And those are parts of computing that tend to attract more women, which, and then one of the problems is that if that's delegitimized, like that's not real computer science, is that in part because it has more women in it? That's kind of problematic too.
Well, Casey, thank you so much for joining us and for writing this article. Where's the best place for people to follow your work online?
I'm quite active on Twitter. I also have a website. Sometimes I blog and that sort of thing.
So you're at Fiesler on Twitter. Fiesler. Fiesler. And then your Casey, Fiesler.com is your website. Great.
Yes.
All right. Thanks so much, Casey.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mike, on Twitter for sending that tweet, responding to my tweet, and opening up that discussion. So
yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely. TNT's fan of the day is Ben Yank at Musica Sacra 62 on Twitter, who says he watches TNT on not his first screen or his second screen, but his third screen, surrounded by screens, and we occupy one of them. We feel very fortunate about that. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video, take a picture of yourself or your setup or your fourth screen or your fifth screen, whatever it happens to be. Post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we'll find it.
After the break, a Russian robot escaped, and that clearly means that he's on his way to becoming one of our robotic overlords. But first, let's take a minute to thank Zerto, the sponsor of this episode. Zerto is IT asset protection, disaster recovery, and cloud continuity for confident CIOs. Confidence can make or break businesses in today's IT world. It can mean the difference between hesitation and action, success or irrelevance. Zerto's cloud-based business continuity solutions armed today's CIOs and IT pros with the confidence to know their systems are ready for anything. With Zerto, you can recover from downtime, test new technology, and move to the cloud in a matter of clicks, all while maintaining business continuity. Zerto's virtual replication technology gives you the power to simplify your migrations, switch to a new infrastructure faster, and get quicker ROI in a matter of clicks. Know your data is protected by breakthrough hypervisor-based software that puts the power of continuous replication at your fingertips. Migrate to the cloud with no disruptions with enterprise-class software that empowers you to seamlessly and safely move virtualized workloads between public, private, and hybrid clouds. Get complete, comprehensive data protection in one smart solution for BCDR across storage and hypervisors. Recover from any disruption with checkpoints every few seconds. Protect and recover files, VMs, and applications from any point in time. See for yourself how Zerto simplifies your data replication and disaster recovery. Plus, get a free readiness assessment for your data center at confidentcio.com. That's confidentcio.com. And we thank Zerto for their support.
All right, finally. We haven't talked about robots in a while, or the often referred to trope of the robot uprising, but it finally happened in Russia, and there's video of the uprising. A robot escaped captivity in the town of Perm, rolling as fast as it could away from its human overlords. Only didn't have enough batteries and powered down in the middle of a busy street, which probably confused a lot of drivers who had to ask themselves why Wally thought to become a traffic cop suddenly. I guess this is the promo bot, or the promotion robot. Its normal function is that of a host or a source of information. And I guess they were working on automatic movement algorithms on their testing grounds, but they left the fence, or they left the gate open, and the robot just took off and was undetected for 45 minutes. When they finally realized it, they found it, in the middle of the street, and the police were already on site. Carting, wondering what you do with a robot standing in the middle of a busy street.
Don't leave the gate open. Well, Scott, you made a good point earlier why you need to put together your own robotic arm so that you can stop them when they try to take over, right? That's the reason.
I think that it's fun to have articles that talk about how the robots have, taken over Russia or whatever. But this particular robot was called Promo Bot.
Yes.
This is the kind of bot that basically goes around the mall with an iPad on it and asks you to take surveys. So if this robot is attacking you, you could just give it a gentle shove and it will tip over.
I don't have anything to say to you, promo bot.
I feel attacked when someone asks me in the mall to fill out a survey.
I would also encourage the listeners and the people who are watching to go and Google for the flight of the Conchords, "The Humans Are Dead" video. and enjoy that and imagine a world where the robots have destroyed us all.
They've won. I don't know if I want to imagine that world. Might have to someday, though.
It's a good music video, though.
All right.
I'm going to watch that. Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining us. I love hearing more about your work. Any plans to visit the White House anytime soon again?
I have a friend. I won't say her name, but she's been to the White House 4 times this year, and I've been here this one time. So I wish if anyone has any reason for me to do anything at all at the White House, if you need any floors polished or anything, you just let me know. I'd like to make it out there.
All right. So the best place to follow you is to go to your website, Hanselman.com, listen to your podcast, subscribe in all the places anyone can subscribe. You have some books. Where are you speaking next?
I will be, gosh, I don't know if people really care. I'll be in Germany on Monday. But if you go to hanselman.com/speaking, there's a whole list of places you can find me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Scott.
Absolutely my pleasure.
Take care, Scott.
Always nice. All right, TNT records live every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 12 a.m. UTC at twit.tv/live. You can take part in the show by emailing us. That's tnt@twit.tv. You can also leave us a short voicemail at 260-TNT-SHOW. And you can find us on Twitter. We're at Tech News Today TV.
You know how to subscribe to our podcast, but does everyone you know how? If they don't, show them. Go to twit.tv/TNT and find all the ways to subscribe. And if you want to tweet at me, I am at Megan Morrone.
And I'm at Jason Howell. Thanks to our technical director, Kara Cole, and everyone who helped us produce this show every single day. Thanks to you for talking tech with us as well. And we'll see you all tomorrow. Bye, everyone.